Welcome to the Connectable podcast.
The Connectable podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
The voice you hear besides mine and Deb is an ultra runner, and she's also the co-founder of the Egg Weight Running Pods, Bree Lambert Sanders. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We always like to start off the show by telling people how we're connected. And today was our first time meeting, which I feel like, Deb, the last few guests we've had on have been through social media, which is a cool part of social media. But we basically just connected with you because I started following Egg Weights because I saw a clip of Joe Rogan talking about it. And then I saw that you guys also had these running pods, and it was a separate Instagram account, and started following you guys, and we started liking each other's pictures. And then before you knew it, we were having a conversation in the DMs and emails, and here we are. So that's pretty much it. So I'm really excited to talk more about what you're doing and both your running background and, you know, this company that you co-founded. So thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thank you for having me on. And, you know, as I said before we started this, it's great to connect with both of you. And so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So sorry, Dad, were you gonna say something?
I have a lot of questions for her.
I think we both do. So if you're cool, we'll start here, because I think this is like the big one. We want to know about your background and who you are. So tell us a little bit about who Bree is, and then how you got into. So I want to know how you got into running, and then how you found your way into ultra running, because I'm assuming you didn't just jump into ultra running.
Right. I did
Okay.
not. Yeah. Okay. No, I did not. Okay, so how did I get into running? So I actually became, I'd say I was a triathlete before I was actually a runner. So when I was in college, I had a friend who waited tables with me, and she had just finished Ironman Kona, and she became a pro after that race. And she said to me, she knew I'd love to cycle. She knew I loved to run, but it was definitely recreational because I was in school. But she said, you know, I think you should try a triathlon. And so I decided to just dive in and attempt the then Danskin Women's Triathlon Series, which was a sprint distance triathlon. And so I started swimming, even though I'm a terrible swimmer. I loved cycling and loved the running part, but the swimming was my least favorite. And so I knew that if I was going to start, competing in triathlon, especially this one being my first, that I should probably get in the pool. So I did. And I ran that event, and I finished it and thought, I think I can actually compete in triathlon. Like, I think this could be something. And I knew that I had an endurance muscle there that I was tapping into. And so essentially I'd say that I was a triathlon first. And that was where my focus was. I was a road triathlete, and then I transitioned into mountain bike triathlon. I don't know if you're familiar with the Xterra triathlon series, but they were pretty big, in the early 2000s or even late 90s. And so I started really competing in Xterra off-road triathlons, and had a mountain bike accident. And it was the mountain bike accident that actually was the transition into ultra running, because I essentially broke my collarbone, I fractured my pelvis, and just like chewed up the whole left side of my body. And I did this while on a training ride with a friend of mine, like in my backyard, a trail that I'd ridden many, many times, and just, lost control of my mountain bike and went down and ended up being airlifted to Valley Medical. And so coming out of that, I knew that I didn't have the same fearlessness that it took to be competitive on my mountain bike. But I knew that I also didn't want to give up endurance racing. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm not a fan of swimming. So I think the next best thing is going to be trail running. And so I just decided that I was going to rehabilitate myself. I have a background in fitness, and just understanding my just understanding how the body can heal itself and knowing what I needed to do to rehabilitate, because I worked with other injured athletes. It was really the recipe, my own personal recipe, that allowed me to like get back out there, get on my feet. And I jumped into a 50K, and I loved it. And after that, this was in 2005. After that, I thought, okay, that's it. Like, I am sold. I am now going to transition into ultra racing. And that's been it. And this is my 16th season, entering my 16th season, obviously coming through a pandemic. So yeah, so it's been great. It's been an awesome journey.
Wow.
That's really cool how after your accident that you're still able to, like, you were like, all right, when I get better, I'm just like, let's do this. And you chose something different, but not completely different, because you've always loved running, but it's good that it didn't, stop you from continuing to do that. And we've talked, Josh, not to get too far on an injury tangent, Josh and I love talking about just the psychological, effects of what happens when you get injured, especially for, like, you're basically an athlete, even, like, and so when you get injured, we've talked about this with athletes a lot on our show, just the things that, that happen just inside your head. So, like, what was that like for you? Just very briefly, like, I can't imagine you being airlifted and being in the hospital and just like not being able to get up the next day and go like do, your workouts. So what was all that like psychologically for you?
I wanted to add on to that question too, before you answer it, because I had a question. I wrote down this question about, you mentioned the fearlessness too. So to go along with Deb's question, like you said, you kind of lost that fearlessness. And I'm wondering if was there a point where you tried to get it back with the mountain biking, or did you just say, so anyway, sorry, I just wanted to add on to Deb's question because I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. So what was going on in my head was that I am mortal. Because I think when you're doing endurance sports and you're pushing limits, I think you lose touch to some degree. Some athletes might lose touch with the reality that you really can get injured, like that you're not immortal, that it's possible to be injured. And, whether it's, if you're a cyclist and you crash on a bike, or you're, just injured, just sort of, some unpredictable event occurs that essentially takes you out of what you're able to do. And then you have an incredible setback and you think, gosh, am I ever going to be able to do my sport again? Or even, am I ever going to be able to compete at the level that I had been? And so those were the thoughts that went through my head. But again, I think because of who I am, I have I have, fortitude, and I've just been through personal challenges. I just thought, you know what, I can do this. And maybe I won't be the best, but I'm going to do my best, so if I can't be the best, I'm at least going to try my best. And so I just was willing to take those chances to see if I could really come back stronger. And then I guess to answer your question, Josh, I was also thinking about when it comes to fearlessness, I did get back on my mountain bike again, but the first time I was on a significant descend, because I'm a good climber, that's when I just thought, man, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. Like, not to the same degree. I can definitely still ride a mountain bike and I feel confident in my handling skills. But when it comes to descending and just having that mindset of, I'm just going to let it go, I just didn't have that anymore. And, I was racing in Colorado and Hawaii. I was sort of bouncing all over the country. And I would just, again, if I went up a mountain and I went down a technical single track, I would just let it go, and knew that I had the ability to navigate. And I'd lost that. I found that I would have like a panic attack essentially. And then I'd have to get off my bike and start walking it down the mountain, because I just didn't have, that sense of trust in myself or even my bike anymore. Right. So that was gone.
And is that, I know nothing about the sport of mountain biking. When you have that mentality, if there's if there's any hesitancy going down a massive hill like that, that almost, from what I understand, it's probably more dangerous, right, for the rider.
It is. Mhm.
Okay.
Especially in a racing situation, because you have other riders, right, that are potentially around you. So if you're on a single track and it's really technical and you're, you know, I mean, it's all rocky, rooty, and you're trying to negotiate a trail and you've got somebody near you. If you hesitate, not only are you going to injure yourself, but you could potentially injure somebody else. And so, I just wasn't willing to take that chance again. Especially, I should also add that I was a mom. So I had a daughter at the time, or I still have her, but she was only 2. And
Yeah.
and that was another thing, is I thought, gosh, now am I not only, in a sense, I can't be reckless anymore because I'm a mom. Like, I have a 2-year-old and I need to be able to take care of her. And so it was a very eye-opening experience for me.
Wow. I feel like when I feel like that's such an athlete mentality, like you feel like you can do anything and you're like, nothing's going to happen to me. you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so to come across the whole like, oh, like I'm just human.
Exactly. Right. Because you hear people say, oh, you're superhuman, or you're Wonder Woman, or you're amazing, you can do anything. And so you start to really believe all that until something like this happens. And then you go, oh man, it really hurts when you fall. Like, I was pretty broken, and then to realize that I may not ever be able to get back up and be the kind of athlete that I had been. So it really was a period of strong reflection for me.
That's so interesting too, because I don't know if I've ever really thought about this. And like Deb said, we've talked on different podcasts about injury, the mental toll it takes and the psychological toll. But it is interesting because you think about different athletes, in major professional sports, when they've gotten injured, and all of a sudden you realize, oh man, LeBron James is human, or Michael Jordan is human, or whoever it may be. You realize they're human, and it's interesting because, and for yourself, you're used to pushing your body to the limit. You're used to pushing yourself, but it only takes that one moment where all of a sudden you're like, oh, I do have limits. Where while you're training and preparing, you're like, I can push myself as far as I possibly can all the time. And so
Yep.
it's an interesting thing because, like, what I'm saying, like the training, you get to that place where you're pushing yourself more than most humans would be willing to. And then in one moment, it's just kind of all taken away, which is such a bizarre thing.
It is. Is. It's totally true. So, yeah.
I've
so
never
that's
experienced that. I'm like, I stubbed my toe. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, I think that it's, I don't know. For me, it was really an important lesson, and I feel like it made me realize how much I need to slow down and just really appreciate, the journey. And that's really where I've been since then, is that I love the sport of ultra running. And I love all the races I've done, and the opportunities I've had to travel and experience these different trails and everything, and to be competitive in it, especially even now, to be as competitive as I am, I think has really been a blessing. And I don't take it for granted. I think wellness is huge, and that's a real big part of how I live my life and how I approach my training with clients.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, the ultra running world is really interesting because I've known some people that were in that world, and I've known some people that got into it and were really big into being part of the crew for ultra runners. Like, I don't know if you know Ray Sanchez. I don't know Ray.
You know Ray. I've raced
Ray
many times.
Oh, awesome.
I know Ray. Oh yeah.
I know he's a beast. I don't know him that well personally. We've had some conversations, but some people that I am close with are really good friends with him, and they've crewed him on like the Badwater Run, and was it Badwater 135, and some of these other ones. So he's kind of, when I think of ultra running, he's kind of the guy I think of. And when I see the videos or the pictures of what he's done, I'm like, oh, these people are maniacs. Like, this is insane what you guys do. So for those of maybe our audience who's not as familiar with the ultra running world, can you tell us a little bit about, like, what does the ultra running season look like? How, like, at what mileage is it considered ultra running? All of those different things.
Yeah. So ultra running is any distance above a marathon. So for example, one of the classics is the Quad Dipsy. And And that's a 28-mile trail run that happens in the Marin Headlands right after Thanksgiving. And so any distance over a marathon, generally 50K and above. And so for me, I tend to like 50-mile, 100K and 100-mile distances. So I actually am going to be running in less than 6 weeks, the Tahoe Rim 100. And that will be my 7th start. And I've won it 3 times. So
Wow.
See how I do it this year.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The first thing I can think, the first thing that popped in my head, I'm like, oh my God, 50 miles. Like, I mean, like, how do you feel the next day? Do you feel like you got hit by a truck? I imagine I would feel like I got hit by a semi. Like, 50 miles. So how is recovery for you after that?
Yeah. So I feel like with 50-mile races and 100K races, I've done these distances long enough now that I feel fine. Like I'm a little tired, but within 5 days or so, I'm good. I'm like back on my feet. It's the 100-mile distance races now that I'm moving a little slower. I'm really hungry. I feel like I need to, just relax and lay on the couch. Yeah.
That's I'm glad you mentioned the food thing, because I've heard, so I remember years ago, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's big into crewing people on their ultra marathon runs.
Yep.
And I was under the impression that you guys just eat. Now, I mean, this is not the case for everybody, but like you guys eat really healthy, really clean all the time. And he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, I think he was talking about Ray. He's like, he eats like a plate of French fries before his race. Like, really? French fries? Not what I would have expected, because you guys are all so lean. So I have to ask, what is your diet look like? And then what is one food that you may eat that would surprise people? Like, oh, she's an ultra runner, but she still eats that.
Yeah. So my diet is, I'd say 70% vegetarian. So
Okay.
I really don't eat that much protein, so it's mostly, fruits, vegetables, some grain, lentils, legumes. So I follow, I guess if you could categorize it, more of a Mediterranean diet. So avocados, olives, nuts, olive oil, that sort of thing. And so I do consume meat, but it's not a lot. I mean, some chicken, so lean poultry. Every once in a while I'll have a steak, but the majority of my diet is vegetarian. I don't say vegan because I do eat cheese, and I will on occasion eat eggs. So that's yeah. But lots of nuts, berries, avocados, hummus. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you actually do eat pretty healthy and pretty clean. Is there like a junk food that you might eat like right after a race where you're like, I just ran 50 miles. I don't care. I'm going to eat this.
French fries.
It is.
Like,
What is it? It's French fries.
Yeah, it's the fat, it's the salt, and then it's the carbohydrate. So I feel like it for a lot of ultra runners, it's going to be French fries and beer, and that's the other thing is like a good beer is just awesome. I mean, it's carbs, it goes into the body, and it helps recovery. So I think you're going to find that a lot of ultra runners, we tend to like beer and French fries.
I will keep note of that the next time I run not 50 miles, but like 5 miles.
Yes.
I'm gonna drink a beer afterwards.
Yes. There you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
That's funny.
Awesome.
Well, that makes sense, because I've done 4 marathons. All of them have been the CIM.
Oh yeah.
They were incredibly slow times. So it's not, I finished them, but they're not like time wise, they're not impressive. But I think it was my last one. At mile, I think 2021, there was a group out there that was handing out mini dollar-sized pancakes and little cups of beer. I'm like, that's interesting. Now it makes way more sense. Those are 2 things that would probably be perfect at that point of the race.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Or even just, like day before, it's okay to have a beer, or I feel like, some, French fry or some sort of a carbohydrate. The old advice of, you should carbo load has now been dispelled, like that you should do that. You don't need to do that anymore. Now it's more just, you sort of load over time as you lead up to your event. That's been shown to be a better method.
Right.
So,
Interesting. Yeah, one of our it was like maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, a friend of mine just completed his first half Ironman, and he was kind of talking about that whole journey. And he said the night, 2 days before, he got a smoothie and a chicken wrap. And he said as he was eating the chicken wrap, he said the chicken was a little bit rubbery and it tasted a little weird. And then he had some stomach issues leading up to the race, and it wasn't until the night before he's like, okay, I think I can actually continue with the race because it just messed him up that badly. So that's what it's got to be one of those. I mean, it sounds like you have it pretty dialed in where you pretty much have a exact idea what's going to go in your body the day before a race. But I imagine that other people that are maybe new to it have to kind of, maybe trial and error, like what works for me or what's going to really hold me back in the middle of the race. So like, what does your, like the night before a big race, what does your meal look like?
So typically I'll have, maybe salmon, broccoli, and a baked potato. I mean, that's pretty standard. I'll put some butter on the baked potato, maybe a little bit of sour cream, but generally it's very simple. Just some grilled salmon, broccoli, and the baked potato. It's not exciting, but it's worked for me. It's, and maybe I might substitute the salmon for a chicken, like a piece of chicken, but other than that, it's, there's no sauce in it or
Sure.
No pasta with sauce or cream or anything like that. It's very simple. Yeah, I think I'm a pretty bland eater, to be honest with you. Like, I eat the same things all the time. I'm not adventurous. Like, I have a really boring palate. I do. I really do. I admit it.
Hey, that's okay. It probably helps you with what you do. It's like the more right, Deb? It's like, it seems like the more complicated your palate. It's like, hey, sure, I'll have some like Thai food before the race. Like, that's a bad idea.
Right, exactly. Or any sort of like meatball sandwich or, stew. Like this one client, he told me he had stew. And I'm like, really? You had stew? And then he went and did the Canyons 100K and he just had all kinds of stomach problems. And I said, well, why did you have that stew? He's like, I don't know. I thought it was healthy. I'm like, no, but you just stew. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It was very interesting, but I'm like, just stay away from the stew,
Yeah, stay away.
Well, it takes time to get to know your own body, right? Like when it feels good, before, like I know I can't eat anything before I work out, or I either don't feel like I feel tired. Like I feel tired if I eat before, even a few hours before, or my tummy hurts, or I just feel sluggish. Like I can't. So empty tummy for me is the best.
Exactly. And that's right. I mean, for me, I just keep it super simple. Even before my long runs now, I hardly eat anything, which freaks a lot of people out because they're like, oh my gosh, you went out and did a 18 mile training run and you didn't really eat anything before. And part of that is because I've just trained my body to, use the energy that it has stored. I mean, we can get into a whole discussion around nutrition because I love nutrition. Like I nerd out over it, but I know we have other things to cover. So I'll just leave it at that. So
you'll have to come back for another episode.
Sure. Why not? I'd love it.
I could nerd out on it too. But Josh and I we love talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not even like really into it. I'm just fascinated by it. Like if you look at my diet, like you eat a lot of M&Ms, buddy. So,
Well, I do like ice cream. I will admit. So you have like a Vice and a good chocolate chip cookie, chocolate cake, and ice cream.
I love all those things.
Yeah, those.
I'm gonna start telling people that I eat like an ultra runner. That's what I'm gonna say. It's like
there you go.
said this, so I guess I must be in the same class.
You're okay. You're good. You're good.
Perfect. Hey, I'm always interested, and I think Deb this is the same for you too, because I feel like we always ask endurance athletes this. What is your favorite place you've run, and then what is like a dream place that you like one day hope to run that you haven't been yet?
So I love the Marin Headlands. So I mean, the headlands are in our backyard. So just over the Golden Gate Bridge, so many beautiful trails there. We're so blessed. The weather's beautiful, blue skies, clean air. So that's where I love to train. And as far as where I'd like to go someday, Switzerland. I have a friend who lives in Switzerland, and she's like, Bree, come run the trails or the mountains. And so that sounds amazing. And actually, I also just realized, or just remembered right now, that there was a vendor who I met who lives in Hong Kong, and he told me that I should go and race in Hong Kong. That Hong Kong has amazing mountains too. So I put that on my list.
That's awesome. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Well, and just the weather's been beautiful lately, so I'm just still thinking of what you said about the trails in your backyard. And because here in Sacramento it's been gorgeous, so I can't imagine how beautiful it is over there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel so spoiled, honestly. I mean, just the microclimates and everything, it's amazing. I mean, I mean, honestly, we have some of the best ultras in our backyard. And I mean, there are ultras all over the country and all over the world. But when you look at what ultras are really popular that have been around a long time, Western States, Way Too Cool, American River 50, the Quad Dipsy. I mean, I could name a lot of them because I've raced a lot of them, but they're all very established and popular for a reason. And a lot of that is because, the setting's amazing, and the trail system's incredible. You can go for miles here. You don't have to do loops. I went out to Austin, Texas last month to run a race, a trail marathon. And no offense against people who are listening to this that are from Texas or know somebody from Austin, but I was like, I wasn't that jazzed. I mean, I was like running in circles essentially over, rocks. So I think we're pretty spoiled.
Yeah. Well, luckily we don't have that many listeners. I don't think our demos in Texas. So you're good. Say whatever you want.
You're on your way. You guys are on your way. So
thank you. That feels good.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, Western
States.
Western States. Is that the one that's really difficult to get into? There's like a lottery. Okay, it is that one. Yeah. So, but it sounds like you've done it before.
I have.
Awesome. Yeah. Just once or multiple times?
Twice.
That's awesome. Because they only let how many people into that race? It's pretty small, isn't it?
Just over 300.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of it is because of the trails.
Sure.
So it starts at Squaw Valley, and then you run from Squaw to Placer High School in Auburn. And just because of the way the trails are set up, and you've got to get permits and everything, and you have crew and aid stations, and it's very remote. And so they allow just over 350. And I'm not sure about this year. I think this year is going to be a little bit different, but
Sure.
But they are having it, which is great. They had to cancel last year. And it's considered the Super Bowl of ultra races.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
very popular. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Deb said, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to the running stuff, like we could talk for days, but we want to make sure we give plenty of time to talk about egg weights. So I want to make sure that I'm completely clear. So are you the co-founder of Egg Weights, and then Running Pods is a part of, or it's like one of the Egg Weights, correct?
Correct. Exactly. So Egg Weights is the parent company, and then Running Pods is under it. And so initially, when Christian Malcolm, who's the founder, inventor of the original, well, this was the prototype that he sent me.
Oh, cool.
So this is awesome. Someday these are going to end up in a museum somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm never going to let these go.
Never let them go.
That's the original.
So he sent me these in a box, and he said, "What do you think?" And he lives in Southern California.
Okay.
And so when I got these, I'm like, okay, these are cool. Like, I totally get it. Like, immediately, because I have a background in mechanics and functional training, I just thought this makes sense. Like, this is something. And so then we started a Kickstarter campaign, and we had the Egg Weights without the finger loop. So if you look at the Egg Weights today, they have a finger loop. Back then they didn't, like when we first started. And so we initially launched this Kickstarter campaign with the intention of targeting runners. But runners didn't really get it, and it didn't work. We made a big push to, have this campaign and get the funding that we needed in order to be able to take the business to the next level and penetrate the running market. But runners, I think, because they are very data driven, but also, mechanics and weight and things of that nature are very important, that the product as it was introduced to them didn't really align. And so what I said to Christian was, I feel like you need to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and come up with a running specific product, because the egg weights, now again, this is the original, are functional, right? Which is great. So I thought they can be used for all kinds of stuff, core training, HIIT classes. I mean, anything that you want to increase intensity, that's the benefit of the egg weight. I said, but with running pods, runners are very interested in improving running form. They're interested in improving core engagement. They want to have some resistance training as well. But again, we're not necessarily as concerned about the strength component, not in the way that somebody who does more functional training would be. So he came back with the running pod. And so this is the running pod. This is the first version. Okay.
So different.
So, very different. So it's basically ergonomically shaped for the runner's palm. Okay. And there's a right and left, and there's this secure finger loop. And so, this is the wrong hand, sorry. So when you hold them, you need to make sure you put the right pod in the right hand.
Sure.
And so they won't slip out of your hands. And they have this nice little notch here at the top where you can place your fingers. And now when you're running, now these are only a pound, but when you're running, you immediately feel that little bit of weight. And if you're someone who doesn't know what your upper body and your lower body are doing while you're running, they immediately bring attention to what is happening, which I love. I love like the whole neural connection when it comes to biomechanics and training. And because running is so form sensitive, it's like swimming. If your swimming form isn't good, your efficiency, your stroke efficiency just goes down the tubes. Same with running. If your arms are flailing out to your side, you don't understand what that forward lean feels like, you put these in your hand and you immediately get it. And that's what I love about them. And so, again, this is like the first version. So these are a pound. These are what we are calling the XCT running pod. And then we have our youth pods, which are half a pound. And these just landed today, which is super cool.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to be doing a big push for, youth coaches, organizations. So any youth sports, these are the little mini half pound youth pods. And
That's
I don't
cool.
see that, but they say run on them.
Oh.
So the new
cool.
XCT adult pods will also have run on them. And they come in a lot of colors. So we have green, orange, black, purple, pink. And so we're really excited about the product and, just spreading the word. I'm intentionally working on market penetration. So I am, overseeing the running division. And so, we also have the Mercury pod. So for the big guys that are really into sprinting and they feel like the little 1 pound isn't enough, then we have the Mercury pod, which is a 1.75. So a little heavier. And let me tell you something, for anybody watching this who goes, yeah, right, like 1.75 pounds, you run with 1.75 pounds, I don't care how big you are, and you're going to feel this. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
And this is a metal called bismuth. So it's a very dense metal. But yeah, so pretty exciting, I'm excited because it's a unique training tool. We're the only name in town, so to speak, or the only game in town, whatever that phrase is.
Sure, yeah. Sure.
We're the only thing in town.
That thing, yeah.
in this space. Yeah. So it's cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Awesome.
That's really
And
cool.
Bree, I want to back it up just a little bit, and for myself and for our listeners. So can you explain like exactly what an egg weight does and like what the purpose is? And then you explained the running pod, and I understand just because I have a background in kinesiology, but for those who don't understand like the biomechanics, can you explain what the running pod does?
Yeah, sure. So the running pods, when you put them in your hands, so essentially, if you're someone who struggles with understanding that forward lean, because the forward lean in running is really important, right? Because that is what generates momentum. And so I feel like a lot of runners, they think they have that forward lean happening, but instead they're way more vertical and they're getting that vertical bounce. And so when you put a weighted object that's palm centered, and again, this is something that fits in the palm of your hand, all of a sudden what's happening is your arms automatically go into that 90-degree position, and you have no choice but to use them because you've got weight in your hands. And so then what happens is as you run, you start to get that forward lean going. Now, I've worked with a lot of runners over the years. I'm a running coach. I've done functional training for many, many years. And what I found was it was so hard to teach form and to teach that forward lean just by talking about it. I mean, you can do drills, and drills are great, right? High knees, butt kickers, all those drills are awesome. But there wasn't anything that I found that was going to be effective to teach that forward lean and to help a runner feel that momentum and that engagement happen until I started using these.
Wow.
And it's crazy. Like anything that I endorse, I like to test myself. I'm a sponsored athlete. I'm going to give a shout out to Ultraspire. I love Ultraspire. They do amazing hydration. Going to give a shout out to Balega socks. Any product I endorse, I test. And so I wasn't going to pitch, so to speak, the running pods unless I knew that they really did work. And I've just found that across the board, when I put them in the palms of runners, now mind you, the product hasn't been fully released to market. Like I've had samples and I've been able to product seed to selective athletes and groups. But once we get the product here officially, which should happen towards the middle of summer, then we'll be able to really get it out to the market, right? And get it out to more people. But those that I've had test across the board have said it's something that you have to try. Like you have to put it in your hands, because to just talk about it isn't necessarily going to sell it. Like it's something you have to experience.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, and I already want to try them.
No, I'm with you. I'm
gonna send you guys some. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Oh, awesome.
I totally want. I mean.
Oh yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Well, right when you said that, I'm like, do I run? I mean, I've been an athlete most of my life, but I don't know. I'm like, do I run?
Yeah.
Lean forward. Like I just started thinking about it as soon as you started talking about the biomechanics and how, and I've never heard of anything like that, like the running pods and like what they do. And I've never heard of a product like that. So
yeah, and just to tell you, so I don't know if you know who Zach Bitter is, but Zach just set the USA Track and Field 100-mile record on the road. He ran the Jackpot 100, and he is one of our athletes. And I sent him some. He's highly accomplished. He's also going to be running the Transcon. So he's going to start in San Francisco and run across the country and try to break the world record in September. Anyway, I sent him the running pods, a sample. He and his wife, Nicole, and she's running Western States, and they both were like, we're sold, So when I got their endorsement, I'm like, this is pretty cool. Meb Kevleski has tried the running pods as well. you know who Meb is. He's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Silver medalist. You know, he's won Boston. He's run many of the world majors. You know, same thing. You know, and so I feel like if those guys had come back and said, yeah, no, I don't think it's going to work, I would have taken it to heart. I would have been like, okay, all right, maybe it's not such a great product, but it's been endorsed by some pretty big names now, so I'm quite happy about that.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's amazing. Let me ask you this. So is this something that's meant to be used for every training run, or do you use it for specific training runs? Or like how often do you use the running pod?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So I say that it's a first of all, it's a tool that's effective for drill work. And so form work, drill work, and then core work, you know, because runners also need to do core. And then tempo runs, so shorter distance, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 mile tempo runs, and then repeats. So if you're out on a track and you want to do, you know, quarter mile, half mile repeats, that's where you're really going to get, I think, the benefit. It's not for distance running, you know, so I wouldn't take these out and go run 10 miles or above. I mean, you could, and I've run up to 12 miles with them, but it's really not, you know, if you just want to get a good arm pump and, you know, really work on core and really work on upper body strength, then yes, you can do that. But you don't necessarily need to cover that kind of distance.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking like, oh, maybe I try a 10-mile run with this. That would have been a horrible idea, it sounds like. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because you saved me a lot of pain and embarrassment.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah, and I think even for youth, which is why I'm really excited about the youth running pods, is, you know, young runners, when they're first starting out, they don't know what they're doing with their arms. You know, like you just tell a kid to run, and oftentimes they're just kind of flailing their arms all over the place, and they don't really get it, right? And so I feel like for young runners especially, you know, start them out right before they even get into that later phase or stage of life, you know, where they're in middle school and high school. You know, if you can get them starting or start them training with this product when they're like 6, 7, 8-year-olds, that's great. It's a great time.
That makes a ton of sense too, because I know, like, I've played baseball my whole life. Deb played softball, and then also coached. And I think we've both seen it with like kids throwing motions, right? You see a kid who maybe didn't receive any coaching with a throwing motion, and it's never corrected, and that throwing the motion never gets better. It just continues to, you know, bad habits continue to develop. And then you see the kids who have a coach that really knows how the mechanics of throwing works, and you see that kid has no problems the older they get. And so I imagine, like you're saying, the younger you can get them, the better, just because it's, you know, before a lot of bad habits are ingrained into them. So it makes a ton of sense.
And that's a great example. That's a great example. So you both are ball players. You were both. Yeah.
Deb played at a much higher level than I did. Like I love the game. I played in my youth. I played in high school, and didn't play in college, but I continued to play in some like adult leagues. I love sports, but Deb actually played at a higher level. So
I played junior college softball, and then I stopped early. I didn't finish. I went to a 4-year, ended up not liking it there, and dropped my classes and drove home. And so, then from there I coached, you know, for about 7 years after that, which was great. And now I just try to keep my competitive edge strong by either I do boxing or I play indoor soccer or something. I just try to do something because I still have that like athletic and competitive nature to do competition.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And you're a teacher.
Yeah. So yeah, I teach high school PE.
Oh, see, that's great. I've always wanted to do that.
So fun. It's great. I get to talk trash to them all day long. It's awesome. It's
yeah.
in high school and they can handle it. So it's cool.
That sounds like fun. I love that. That's awesome.
Well, especially for Bree, you and Deb, it would be perfect because you guys are most likely in better shape than most of the students. So it's like they can't say anything back to you. It's like, You know what I mean?
Right? Yes, it's true.
It's like, hey, pick up your mile time. It's like, oh, let me see what you can do. It's like, okay, watch this, and then you just fly around the track. So that's gotta be a great space to be in.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
There you go.
Sure.
Wait,
Well, hey,
really?
we want to. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Deb.
I'm sorry, one more question. So do egg weights, do they do this like essentially the same thing as the running pods? Like, is that?
Yeah, no. So egg weights egg weights essentially started with, again, this idea of these are palm centered weights, and there's still a grip, so it's similar in terms of that, but in terms of the shape and the purpose, it's different. So egg weights are more for boxing, MMA, UFC, HIIT, yoga, Pilates, so I call that more of the sort of, I guess, all around egg. Whereas the running pods are not shaped like the egg weights at all. They're specifically for running. And so that's the distinction. And so, and their purpose, I mean, could you use a running pod for a HIIT class? Probably, but it's really not designed that way. It's kind of like, I always tell people, it's kind of like having, your racing flat and your thick, cushy shoe, right? Or your trail shoe and your road shoe. I mean, they're really probably not even a good example either, now that I think about that. Like it'd be like your sneaker, like your run around, and then your true racing shoe, right? It's like they're sort of similar in function to some degree, but they serve an entirely different purpose, right? So I guess that's probably the best way I can describe the difference between the egg weights and the running pods.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's funny that we're having this conversation, because like the whole reason, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the whole reason I discovered the running pods was because I saw the egg weights, and it was just a video of, I think, Joe Rogan talking about, like, I hold these little egg weights.
Yeah.
A pretty big endorsement for the company. And I'm like,
right.
oh, that's cool. And I've been, especially since this pandemic, I've tried some, I'm not gonna call it shadow boxing. I'm punching in the air with like with little dumbbells. And I'm like, they're just so big and bulky. And then I came across that. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then, through that, I discovered, I was like, oh, the running pod, and I do a decent amount of running. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. And like I said, here we are. So it worked out well.
Exactly. Because of the ergonomic shape of the running pod, it feels so much better than an egg weight does.
Sure.
I mean, I know some folks, I'll say folks, sounds like an old-fashioned word, but whatever.
That's all right.
People who use egg weights and they run with them, and that's fine. I always say, okay, that's fine if you're comfortable with that. But ideally, you're going to want to go with a running pod because because of the way it's shaped. And when you hold them in your hand, it just makes sense. I mean, they're just way more comfortable. And I feel like you're able to really get into that true running form as opposed to the way the egg weight feels when it's in your hand.
Well, I was going to say, it seems like if you use the egg weight for running, it could potentially cause some bad habits, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the shape is odd enough to where it just, you're not holding it properly then.
Sure.
It's kind of crazy, but it does happen. But the other thing I wanted to mention too is that, when we determined that the egg weights weren't going to be an effective way to penetrate the running market, what we realized was that there was a space for it. We just needed to figure out what is the space. And it was when Christian went into a boxing gym in LA and met with Freddie Roach that he said, you know what? These are awesome. Like, I think these make all the sense in the world. And then they just went crazy in the boxing and then MMA and UFC markets.
I was gonna say, that's kind of another big name. It's a kind of a big endorsement to get from Freddie Roach. So.
Oh yeah,
cool.
Huge.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, and then I think just because Christian's in LA and he's able to connect with, celebrity trainers and celebrities in general who are really into fitness, that's just really helped a lot.
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
and so it's been great because we've been able to use that as the springboard to really grow the company.
Yeah.
But then now that we have the running pods, that's a whole nother area that I'm excited about because of my passion for the sport, and I get to see move that, move that forward.
That's so
That's
cool.
awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm glad we had you on the podcast today because I think
Oh, thank you.
we have a lot of, I mean, like I said, Deb and I, we both run a decent amount, and we've had other, we've had different running groups on here. We've had athletes on here before, and we have just, I know, like my mother-in-law listens, she's a runner. There's a lot of people that we know that are runners. So I think they're going to really benefit from this. And I think they'll really find this interesting.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone, I mean, certainly, I'm going to just plug myself right now.
Please, hey, that's why you're
They
here.
can
Go
follow
for
me
it.
on Instagram at Catch the Breeze, and then on Instagram at Running Pods. And we definitely want to spread the word, or I want to spread the word, so that if anyone is, associated with any running club, organization, please don't hesitate to just message me, and I'd love to send some samples out, and just, I love feedback. I love to hear, how the product is being used, and just do a lot of sharing.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I was gonna say, Deb, do you have any more questions? I think we both have like a million questions, but we also want to be respectful of Bree's time. So, but before we kind of wrap up with our last question, do you have anything, Deb?
Well, I was gonna say you can't ask me that because of course I have.
Yeah.
I also don't want to keep her here till midnight, so
Yeah.
gotta let her go, let her loose.
Yeah.
No, but but I just thank you for talking about all this and answering our questions, and jamming out with us about. I've never heard of any. I'm just still like, that is such a great idea. Like the running pods. I've never heard of anything like that. I think that is brilliant. So hopefully our listeners could check your Instagram out. Anyone who's listening.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think one more thing I do want to say is,
Yeah, please.
is for me, the product is also about accountability. And I think that, because I'm a trainer and a coach and have been doing this for such a long time, one of the things I'm always encouraging my clients and others is to, to find that thing, that touchstone to help motivate you to move, to get in your, whatever walks, your hikes, your runs, your exercise. And I feel like the beauty of this product as well is the fact that it's like an accountability partner, so it's something that you can connect. So you guys are involved with connecting, right? I mean, that's the big part of what you're doing here. And I feel like, running is a community sport. Ultimately, it's an individual sport, but there's a lot of community built around it. And my hope is that when people start using the running pods, and then they have their friends, and their friends are using the running pods, that it just becomes this opportunity for people to connect, to get outside, to have that accountability, to be active, to be healthy. And, you have this like little reminder, we have these little egg weights bags that they come in, so you can put this by your front door or in your car, or, you know what I mean? And you just like are reminded that, hey, I'm going to get out and I'm going to go get my run in or my walk or my hike in, with, whether it's with myself or with my girlfriends. And it's just great. So
I love that. Yeah, I already have like people in my mind that I would love to connect you guys with. I think it would be really beneficial for them and for you guys. So
thanks.
yeah, well, so before we get out of here, we do have our last question. That is what we call our connection suggestion. And we like to ask our guests if there's any brand, person, organization, could be a restaurant, whatever it may be, anything out there that you feel like our audience should be connected with and aware of. So do you have a couple of those for us?
I do. I think I mentioned them earlier. So Ultraspire for hydration. So if you're someone who, you carry a bottle, or you are looking at a vest, or, waist pack, headlamp, any of those items, Ultraspire is awesome. I've been a sponsored athlete of theirs for a number of years now. I really believe in their products. And then also Balega International. It's a sock company. They do a lot for community. They do just tons of giving back. I just think their socks are amazing. I know a lot of people have their preference in terms of socks, but they have a sock for every type of foot. And they're comfy. I race all my ultras in them. I've never had a single blister. I love their colors, and I just really believe in their socks and in their company. And then one thing I do have to say is my good friend Chris, for those of you who ever visit the South Bay area, go see Chris at Running Revolution if you want to get fitted for shoes. He's a specialty running store. He's one of my closest friends, and I think he knows shoes. So if you have any shoe questions or want a recommendation, Chris at Running Revolution in Campbell, California.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's like the most important part, is to have like a comfortable shoe when you're running. That is the worst feeling for your feet.
Yes.
Or like to have a blister or whatever. It's the worst. And then you just don't even want to run anymore.
Exactly. And I know in Sacramento, you have lots of running stores there. So, I know a ton. But if you're ever in the South Bay,
yes,
go see Chris.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, what do you run in? What shoes do you run in?
So for trails, I run, Saucony is the company I run in.
Okay.
So for trails, the Peregrine, Saucony Peregrine, and for road, the Guide.
Got it. Very cool. All right, cool. So everybody, you guys have no excuse now. If you want to get running, you have recommendations, you know where to get your shoes from, the companies to go to get all your running gear. So there's no excuse. And you have the egg weights. And you have the egg weights. Or
running
the running
pods.
Running pods. You're set. This is a perfect podcast if you're trying to get in better shape. So
that's right. Just run.
Just run. And then, so one more time, can you give us your social media handles as well? Just one more time.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Catch the Breeze. And also I do have a Facebook page, Bree Lambert. It's Live Well, Finish Strong. It's my athlete page. And then Instagram at Running Pods. So you'll be able to follow Running Pods there.
Perfect. And then Deb, where can they follow us?
You guys can follow us on Twitter at Connectable Pod. Did I say that right?
You did. I was a little touch and go there, but you got it.
I would. Yeah. I'll explain in a second, Bree. And then Instagram at Connectable Podcast, and we're Facebook as well.
And YouTube. Yep.
And YouTube. Oh yeah, this is on YouTube.
I should have done that one today. My bad. I shouldn't have passed the rock.
I'm on YouTube too, but I never say that. I'm on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. We'll make sure we follow you then.
Okay, but Bree, usually Josh does this part, and our other podcast that we used to have up, I mean, it's still up and going, but Character Combine, I would do the plugs for that one, and then Josh does this one, and so every once in a while he just likes to toss me
just throw a curveball in.
Your turn, and I'm like, oh, what is it now? So I
right.
the Character Combine plugs just now, so I had to think about it for a second.
Usually she does really well with those curveballs. Today it was a mistake. That was my fault. I should not have passed the ball. I should have just kept it.
That's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
There we go. Hey, you know what? As long as you know where to find Bree, that's all that matters. You can find us every week. But Bree, this week, make sure you go follow her. So, well, Bree, thank you so much again. And in 6 weeks, good luck at the Tahoe. Is it Tahoe? I forgot the name of it.
Rim 100.
Tahoe Rim 100. Good luck with that. And yeah, we would love to have you back on the show at some point down the road to talk. Well, we can just talk all nutrition.
All nutrition.
All nutrition.
That sounds awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was good meeting you.
Yeah, you as well. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable Podcast.